So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll start by introducing myself before and hand it over to Peggy. And before we do, just wanting to let you know that we want this to feel like we're in like kind of a group conversation, and invite you at any time to post questions, thoughts in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the session. So please feel free to, like as Peggy said, engage with us. That's what we are here for, and hopefully building a little community over the next hour. So my name is Montserrat. I work with St. Joseph Health. I am the school-based behavioral health lead. And what that means to me is that I get to support our schools here in Sonoma County, particularly our educators, to bring social emotional learning resources to the classrooms, provide trainings, as well as do direct program with students around mindfulness and movement, and ultimately work towards creating healthy future communities. I'll turn it over to Peggy.
Thank you, Montserrat, and welcome to those who have joined us. I don't know if you guys are experienced this, but when I'm sharing my screen, I just can't see. I'm not as engaged as you can be when you're not sharing your screen. So that's why, Montserrat, if you let me know if there's questions in the chat. I'm Peggy Hilton. I work with Kaiser Permanente. I'm actually part of our regional team based in Oakland, but I live here in Santa Rosa and have been working out of my home for the last few years, actually. My work is to engage with our community partners to provide funding for pathway programs for health careers with a particular emphasis on increasing diversity in the healthcare workforce. And recently have been pulled over to help with some of the patient and family care experiences, because with COVID, it's very challenging for healthcare workers to stay connected to the patient and the families in a way that's meaningful and taking care of their needs. So also working on programs to take care of our healthcare providers. I've been a HearthMath trainer for the past 4 years and helped lead the program within Kaiser to certify and train our staff throughout the Northern California region, as well as support some of our community partners in being trained so that they can provide this in their own communities. So HearthMath, just a brief overview, was developed almost 30 years ago. Next year will be their 30th anniversary. Their tools are used around the world by hospitals, healthcare workers. Stanford is another big, Stanford and Cleveland Clinic are big supporters of HearthMath. Schools and universities, professional athletes, and Olympic teams are often engaged in HearthMath tools. Police, fire, first responders, and we've been doing a lot recently with the American Red Cross. They've been training their chief nurse executives actually now around the world so that they can provide HearthMath tools to the people that are responding to the disaster, as well as the people impacted by in disaster areas. Just a little bit that they, one of the reasons that it's they provide great tools that also have a lot of research backing their effectiveness, peer-reviewed journals. It helps when you're training healthcare professionals to be able to show that these tools are actually sort of evidence-based. That's what they're looking for. And we're gonna start with a little self-care for all of us. So this is one of the HearthMath tools. It's called Quick Coherence. And I always like to use this to start a session because, one, it helps the presenters, and two, it just helps us sort of step away from whatever it is that we have going on around us. So there are 3 steps. One is you just focus your attention on the area around your heart, and you're going to be paying attention to your breath. And the 3rd step, and I'll be guiding you through this, is to ask you to activate and sustain what's called a regenerative emotion. And a regenerative emotion is a positive feeling that would be something like appreciation or gratitude, joy or love. So that part of what you're helping to do is to shift your physiology into a more coherent state. So let's go ahead and just get comfortable. Whatever that means for you, this quick coherence technique can be done while you're driving, it can be done in the shower, it can be done while you're in the middle of a meeting. I needed to use it today and forgot to before I opened an email that I knew was going to totally elicit a little bit of a reaction. So then I used it after I opened the email. And so if you'd like to close your eyes, feel free to do that. You can use a soft focus or leave your eyes open, whatever you prefer. You're going to drop your attention to the area around your heart. You just focus all of your attention on that area around your heart. For some people, they put their hand on their heart. It just helps to bring your awareness there. And then maintain your heart focus while you're breathing. And you're imagining that your breath is going in and out of that area around your heart. And you want to slow your breath down from what you are normally, your normal breath. And you want to deepen your breath. Again, your focus is on that area around your heart. Slower and deeper rhythm to your breath, whatever is comfortable for you. And now let's go ahead and bring in that heart feeling. Might be appreciation for someone or something in your life. Might be an animal, a pet. Could be a place. Maybe something that brings you joy, gratitude, or a sense of connection. You want to just really feel that as you're breathing in that area in and out around your heart. Okay. So Montserrat, do you want to, so I'll stop sharing and Montserrat's going to bring up a video. And as you're watching the video, just pay attention to what you're feeling while you're watching the two different segments.
Okay, and Peggy, I will be sharing the cab video.
Yep.
Wonderful. One moment as we work through tech here. And share with computer sound. Oh, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm trying to, I must have hit something I wasn't supposed to. 1 second. Oh. I imagine you just heard something, but nothing was showing on your screen. Let's try one more time.
That was it.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. So the end, the tagline there was "You see the world through how you feel," and even though it was a Lufthansa ad, we weren't really promoting them, but it's just a great ad. And I'm just wondering if anybody wants to share about how they responded to the two different segments.
The first was certainly chaotic.
Right. So in the chaos, how did you feel?
A little stressed. I don't like a lot of noises coming at me at once.
And did you notice, did the images on the outside of the cab then look different to you in the first video versus the second?
Definitely.
But did you notice,
They were
were the
same.
images? Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So what is interesting is every once in a while we show this video, some people prefer the first one, but the majority of time, people, they feel much more relaxed in the second segment. And it's just a great example of how we're going to be talking about our emotions and how our emotions are sort of playing in the background of our experience as we go through life, and those emotions really influence how we interact with people and how we see what's going on around us in the world. So for me, I noticed that the second one looked more like people were dancing, and the first one looked as if they were threatening. So it completely shifted the way that I felt that people were sort of whether or not they were a threat or whether they were a joyous, something joyous to observe. So
Yeah, I would agree with Tara. It was the first part seemed really chaotic. And actually, the first time that I saw the video, it took me watching to the second time, kind of towards the end of the first one, and then rewatching the second time where I gathered, oh, wait, it is the same. But the feeling was so wholly different, and it's a minute blip. And if you think, for me, it was like, whoa, thinking about that was like over the course of the day, and just how quickly your emotion can shift or your feelings can shift. So it was really powerful for me.
this is actually also a good. We've shared this video with a number of different classrooms where we've done HearthMath presentations, and students really respond well to this. It helps them connect with, how, like Montserrat just was sharing, how quickly she went from one emotion to another. So for some reason, there. So again, just a reminder that, we see the world through how we feel. So if you think about like a day where you get up and you're feeling sort of like you woke up on the wrong side of the bed and you're not even sure why, maybe you didn't sleep well or something's potentially gnawing at you that you're just not aware of, that feeling has a way of influencing so much of what we experience throughout the rest of the day. So we're going to switch to another video, and this one's a little bit longer, and Montserrat will be leading a conversation about this.
So the next video we're going to watch, because we are talking about emotions, is a clip from the Resilience film. It's about 7 minutes long and talks about the stress, a heightened stress response. Just so that you're all aware, this video, if you are interested in viewing the full hour long, we are happy to provide that for you. But again, we're just showing a little blip. And just to give you some context around it, it talks about the adverse childhood experiences study. And if you'd like more information about that as well, I'm happy to provide that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And again, we're just going to watch like a little portion of this.
happened late this afternoon, just minutes apart. The first shooting, 424 on Yorkshire at Oakdale, less than 2 miles away.
There were some things that you were struggling with. And I think one of the things was his asthma management, but some of the things was school. Like, we were not in that place with school.
He was having a difficult time, right along with a lot of other kids that are having a difficult time switching over from a normal routine to being scared to going back to a normal routine. It was very difficult.
A lot of families said, violence is a really big issue in our community. We need mental health services to help to deal with that. And do you know kids who have died?
My friend Sean just died a couple weeks, like last week. Somebody stabbed him. Part of the gang right up there. For a while, They came in for a regular physical, but he's been acting out in school. Okay. Auntie seems overwhelmed and feels like she needs tools. We had hired a psychologist who was also on site seeing families with me at the clinic. One day he came into my office and he said, "Have you seen this?" And he handed me the ACEs study by Felitti and Anda. And honestly, it was like I was hit by a bolt of lightning. It was a total validation of what I was seeing in the kids that I was treating. Being in a community where you're hearing gunshots on the daily, where you are having friends who are being killed or being incarcerated, that really affects your body, right? Like it gets under your skin. We got the immunization rate up. We had nutritional counseling. So we were getting great health outcomes. But one of the big challenges that we found was that families were saying, "Dr. Burke, please, can you help Bobby?"
Come on and follow me.
You gotta see Bobby. Bobby's falling out in class. He is hitting the kid next to him. He can't pay attention. He's running out of class. Please, Dr. Burke, he's got ADHD. Can you please put him on some Ritalin? And when I did a thorough history and physical, which is my job, it turned out that I couldn't make a diagnosis of ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, because a lot of the kids I was seeing had so many traumatic experiences in their life. Okay. Now, if you take a kid who's been exposed to trauma, they also will have difficulty with impulse control, difficulty with regulating their behavior. The big difference is, if you give a child with an overactive stress response a stimulant, what do you think is gonna happen? It's not gonna help. And so I think people were seeing the behavior, but we're not getting to the root of what is causing the behavior.
But there's actually something functionally changing in their brain, and it's interesting how much activity overall they have when processing all types of emotions: happy, sad, fearful, angry. We tend to divide the world of mental health separate from the world of physical health, but the body doesn't do that. The body's only one.
Stressful or traumatic things can affect the health of kids. And so one of the things that we do here is that we screen all of our patients for what we call adverse childhood experiences, or these kind of stressful experiences in childhood. We don't need to know which ones, we only need to know how many. It's intense, and getting folks to open up and all that stuff is very difficult. But here's the thing about it that may have occurred in your family. We found that for kids at the Bayview Child Health Center, if they had an ACEs score 4 or more, they were 32 times as likely to have learning and behavior problems in school. 32 times as likely, right? Than if you had an ACEs score of 0.
The reality is that we all need a certain amount of stress, a certain amount of anxiety to perform well. If we don't care about that exam that we're gonna have tomorrow, we'll probably fail. If we're gonna cross the street and a truck is coming at us, we have release of adrenaline.
we have release of a hormone that we call cortisol. We want to jump out of there, and adrenaline and cortisol are going to help us do that. So there's that good amount of stress. But if all day long you're feeling like a truck is coming at you, day after day after day, that's going to take a toll on the body. And the amygdala obviously here has greater activation in the PTSD. We were able to image children that had experienced trauma and compare those brain images with children that didn't have an experience of trauma, didn't have symptoms.
Right, an exaggerated fear response.
An exaggerated fear response with decreased activation in areas that we need to control that emotion, in the frontal areas.
Exposure to early adversity and trauma literally affects the structure and function of children's developing brains. So the kid next to them hits them, or the teacher reprimands them in a way that they're uncomfortable with, right? Literally what they're feeling, that activation is like there was a truck coming at them. You can give something that will mask symptoms, right? For example, if someone has a cough, right? You can give them a really strong cough serum that will suppress their cough. But if it's because they have tuberculosis or lung cancer, then what you're doing is merely masking the symptoms while the disease process continues to fester. We know what's happening in children's brains and bodies with the experience of toxic stress. So the question now is, what do we do about it?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and come back. And before we kind of unpack this, we invite you, if you're comfortable, to kind of, share in the chat what your feeling was after watching that. And again, with that film, it was kind of hard to find the right place to kind of start, but wanted to give you all enough context for that piece of the film. So does anybody want to just kind of chime in and tell us, what your thoughts are in terms of like the stress response, and or, how in your classrooms, or wherever you find yourself within the school system, how you see this manifesting itself. We have a quiet group.
I'll say something. I work at the Sonoma County Juvenile Detention Facility. And I see kids who come in who at 15 have more life experience, 10 times more, life experience and trauma that they've gone through than I can ever even imagine. And so I think seeing that is frustrating for me. And I feel like I can only help with the symptoms. And that, yeah, I guess the video is kind of frustrating and, on that point. So.
Thank you, Anne, for sharing that. Yeah, I think that, there are more examples and other stories in the film that kind of talk about, kind of like the starting point of once ACEs of, an ACE score, what have you, has been identified, and what are different interventions that can follow. And just again, because we're pressed for time, we are focusing HearthMath as a potential strategy for bringing down that trauma stress response that we, within the communities that we work with, that we know we're seeing. And there is a lot of science around the building of resilience, and how positive, just one positive person in the life of a child can make such a difference. And, kind of to your point, you can do what you can do, and more than likely it's for them, it's it's just so much greater what you're able to give them. So anybody else? All right, well, thank you. Anne, Peggy, do you want to, let's see, there you are.
Sure, bring the screen back up. Thanks, Montserrat. So as I just mentioned, I don't know why, as soon as there are a multitude of opportunities and ways to help people deal with their emotional, either the sort of hardwired emotional reaction to something or their current emotional reaction to something. And again, HearthMath is just one of the organizations that provides some tools, but part of the reason that we're sharing them here is because the tools are, they don't cost anything, and they're very easy to integrate into your day as you're dealing with stress. And they're easy to share with any students that you work with. So for the purpose of what we're talking about today, this is sort of an expanded definition of resilience. And of course, our understanding of resilience is something like anything that evolves and changes over time. But for now, we're actually expanding it to be the capacity to prepare for, to recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. And what we're trying to share here today is that you can build your resilience capacity so that you can sustain your energy and respond to what's going on around you in a very different way. And I think any of us can connect easily with a memory of a time when we're feeling very, very stressed or tired. And if you look back and think of how did I react to whatever, sort of life event that might have happened, something we all probably experience is somebody cutting us off while we're driving. And if we're tired and stressed, we might be responding to that in a way that's like, the movie explains it beautifully when it has the child running in the road, and it's sort of like almost anything can then feel like it becomes a life-threatening situation if we're really drained and we don't have any resilience. So these tools, the tool that we're going to be sharing today is really just about helping to build your resilience. And one of the most important steps in being able to stop energy drains and to increase your resilience is to identify unnecessary energy expenditures, which means we have to be self-aware about what we're feeling. And that's part of the reason that we're inviting you, that we invited you when you first joined. We're inviting you to reconnect with how you feel after you saw the Taxi Cab movie, and then how do you feel after the movie that we just saw about ACEs. We're actually on a roller coaster of a variety of different emotions, even in this very short period of time together. But we want to be aware of what we're feeling, because often we might have something, whether it's fear or anger or betrayal, or we could, any one of a number of things that can be running sort of behind the scenes, that's draining our energy. And a great example of it, again, just for our day-to-day lives, if you have a phone that's got a lot of apps on it, or you accidentally add apps and the apps are draining your phone and you can't figure out why you have to be charging your phone up all the time, those are sorts of things running in the background that are just sort of taking away energy that we aren't necessarily paying attention to. Certainly that would be my case. This is it reiterates the point that you were seeing in the movie. This is an example of someone who was on a 24-hour heart monitor, and he was working with some of the folks down in HearthMath. This is an example of his heart rate being captured by the heart monitor while he's driving in the car. And so as you look at this screen here, you can see that his heart rate is somewhere between 50 and 80 for the first 10 minutes while they're driving. And then he and his wife have an argument. And in the course of that argument, then his heart rate, this actually is, when I first saw this, I was totally blown away by the fact that his heart rate went up to around 150 and stayed there from an emotional reaction. And if I stop to think about it, and I think this is true for any of us, we know we feel that way. How do you feel when you're, like, really connect with how you feel when you're angry or upset? But they also, because they'd been working with him for a while, they knew that through exercise, he was not able to sustain a heart rate this high for that long a period of time through exercise. So he's really doing a lot of draining of his battery here when he is at this elevated heart rate. And even if you look at the end of the chart, even after he's reporting that the argument ended, he still has a significantly increased heart rate. Very hard on his body. So what we're really looking for is to find a way to bring ourselves into coherence, optimal state in which the heart, the mind, and the emotions are aligned and in sync. Physiologically, this is where the immune, hormonal, and nervous systems function in a state of energetic coordination. I love this image because we can easily envision if you took one or two of those crew members and they started paddling at a different rate or going backwards, the difference in the effectiveness of that team in moving forward. And that's what happens when we're out of coherence. So the heart has its own complex nervous system, and you could call it the heart brain. And this understanding comes from research in a field called neurocardiology. I am probably older. I don't see everybody's faces here, but it might be quite a bit older. There was a long time when the belief was that the brain was just in charge. It, dictated everything. But they actually know that that's not true now, that our emotions are sending all sorts of signals into the heart. The heart is then sending signals into the brain. And that the signals from the heart especially affect the brain centers involved in strategic thinking, reaction times, and self-regulation. So maybe it wasn't in the movie. I'm trying to think now, maybe we didn't cover the autonomic nervous system, but basically both branches of the autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and sympathetic, connect to the heart. And so any change in activity in the autonomic nervous system affects the heart on a beat-to-beat basis. And those beats from the heart go directly to the amygdala. This is gives you capture what a heart rate looks like when someone is incoherent. And in this case, they just asked somebody to think about something that really frustrated her. In the lower panel, they asked her to think about something like we were talking about, the regenerative emotion. You can go from this upper panel to this panel in a matter of seconds. And the more you practice allowing yourself to pause, like what we did with the dropping our attention to the area around our heart and slowing down our breath, and then bringing in a regenerative emotion, you're helping to balance your autonomic nervous system. It's just an actual physiological sort of response to you taking that pause. And I know for myself, HearthMath has, biofeedback tools. When I bring in the regenerative emotion, my coherence becomes even greater. So the breath work helps me, but the regenerative emotion takes me to a completely different and much more balanced autonomic nervous system response. So again, this is just another way of looking at how incoherence inhibits brain function and coherence facilitates brain function. And I think again, really, especially when you're thinking about working with students, it impacts their ability to make good decisions, their social awareness, and their ability to self-regulate. And, you know, from our perspective as a healthcare system, we want our healthcare providers to be in a coherent state when they're making decisions about how to care for patients, even in a highly chaotic environment. It's inviting them to find a place of coherence in that chaos. And there was a team that started using the quick coherence technique, which again, you can do it while you're washing your hands. And that's what we're teaching them. It does it. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. You can stand there and wash your hands, which you need to be doing between patients anyway. And so when they would have a code blue, which means everybody needs to come forward to handle an emergency situation, that when they did the intentional pause, they worked so much better as a team. It was they helped to shift the chaos in the energetic field. So we're going to talk a little bit about depleting and renewing emotions. And so depleting emotions are emotions like fear and anger, frustration, sadness, depression. And I want to, again, the movie did a really great job of talking about this. These are nothing that we're saying here is that there's good emotions and bad emotions. We're not saying that at all. This is part of the human experience. We all go through these emotions multiple times a day or through the week. What we're really looking at is, are these a go-to response to a situation? And if so, is there a way for us to balance our response? If we're in this response, is there a way for us to move to a place where we can balance our system a little more effectively? Or another question is, how much time do we spend here? Renewing emotions or feelings that create coherence. There's a tremendous amount of research, and I'll have a resource document that I'll be adding to the Google page about the actual physical benefits of gratitude and compassion, appreciation. It's quite extraordinary. There's an entire center studying the impact of gratitude on our physiology. So when you pause and you shift your breath so that you're breathing a little more slowly and intentionally, which is really what we generally say to somebody if they're wound up, we say, take a breath, because we forget to breathe. My personal experience was my husband died when I was about 42. And I went to a grief group and I couldn't breathe. And they kept telling me, take a breath. And I just really had a hard time breathing because I was in a complete state of shock and grief. So this is also something that you can use with your students, or feel free to use it yourself. This is actually a chart that has been created so that you can start to pay attention to where you're spending your time, what might be a depleting emotion, what might be a renewing emotion. Depleting emotions are on the left-hand side of the screen. And these are the ones that where you get a cascade of biochemical changes that burn a lot of energy. Cortisol is one of them. And as the movie pointed out, cortisol is not a bad hormone. It is just something that takes a tremendous toll on our bodies if it's coursing through there a lot. On the right-hand side of the screen are renewing emotions, and that's another cascade of hormones and biological changes, including DHEA, which is a vitality hormone. It's something that's we can increase the amount of DHEA we have in our system. It's also something that is taken often as a supplement for athletes who are trying to improve performance, although generally it is not allowed, like in the Olympics. And as you can see, we have the sympathetic or the high heart rate on the top of the grid, and the parasympathetic or low heart rate. I had to add an image of somebody in a parachute to help me remind me that parasympathetic meant a decline, a slowing down of systems. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to just think for a moment about this last week. What would you fill in on this grid? Does anybody want to share an emotion that they might, either you're feeling it a lot or you're feeling it right now, or one you might even want to be an emotion that you want to bring more of into your life, and also share, if you want, where you think it fits on the grid.
I think for me this week, I've been trying really hard not to read news or watch the news, and for one reason or another, I felt really compelled to do that, and it was really stressful. And I recognized just in myself how long it took me to just kind of even be aware of what I was feeling, to then try to get to like the renewing side, I would say, of this grid. But I really had to sit with it to be able to say, oh my gosh, I've just, the last 3 hours or the last 4 hours have felt so stressful, and just trying to come back to what even kind of put me in that place to begin with. So yeah, it took almost an entire day for me to just try to find, those renewing emotions and make sure that I wasn't spending so much time there as I had.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I do it myself, and so many more people are talking about how a news diet is really critical right now, because to your point, we can just go down the rabbit hole of reading endless pieces of information that are just ramping up our stress. And so I totally agree with that. And I think you had put in the chat when you first joined that you're feeling anxious. I'm not really seeing this chat too much right now, but anxious would be up here as a depleting emotion that can be on the sympathetic ANS, so the high heart rate.
And put in the chat doom scrolling. Yes.
Doom scrolling, absolutely. That's a great way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so addictive. That's the part it's like really addictive to do the doom scrolling, and then not even realize what's happening to our bodies while we're doing it, or how it impacts. I often feel like it's kind of like I can't see totally. It's like my vision just gets narrow.
Well, and I imagine too, with this day and age and everything being at the disposal of your handheld device, and how many of our youth, especially those, they have their own phones, if they are also kind of clued into how much they are reading and or watching news, and whether or not they're the self-awareness of whether I'm in this depleted state or this renewal state. Because as an adult, even myself, like I said, it took me a while to really kind of pinpoint, I needed to move from that. So just thinking about a tool like this, where you can hand it over to someone and they don't have to share their answers, but just kind of seeing, where do I live a lot of the time, and maybe kind of connecting what are some things that are happening in your life or in that space that are kind of keeping you either on one side of the grid or the other.
Right. So just before I move on, if you do end up using this grid, examples, and we can go ahead and provide them with the resource material, but examples here would be in the upper left-hand corner, like I said, anxiety, fear, on the bottom left-hand corner, would be sadness, depression. The upper right-hand corner could be excitement, joy. So our renewing emotions can be emotions that actually lower our heart rate or raise our heart rate. I love the emotion of love because, well, I love love. That's kind of repetitive, but love could be up here, really revving up your heart rate, or it can be down here where you're in that sort of deep connected place and feeling of love. So it can be all over on this side of the renewing emotions. So it's just something for you to think about. And again, easy exercise to share with students if you like, or your family, or just for yourself, kind of chart out where you are. There's no judgment with this either. There's no intention to say, well, if you're over on the left, there's something wrong with you. It's not saying that. It's just a way to increase your awareness of how you're responding to things throughout your day.
And Peggy and I did this with high school students last year, and from the comments that we received from them, that really was something that came up. One, what Peggy said earlier, that we're living a human experience, and so wherever you find yourself on that continuum of emotions, a lot of the kids just said that they felt like it was a nice way to think about, oh, it's okay that I'm feeling really stressed right now, or it's okay that I'm having these emotions because it is part of the experience. And the other piece of it was just the no judgment around what we're feeling. And I personally, I have a 13-year-old son, and we try really hard when he's maybe more on the side of he's doing the depleting emotions, but just I tell him all the time, honey, it's totally okay what you're feeling right now. And it's such a different conversation than, why are you feeling this way? Or I do ask him what's going on, but I think it's just a good reminder, even for me as a parent, to normalize what's kind of happening in his experience at that moment, especially during times like this, when the anxiety and the stress is really just feels really heavy for our kids. And I did want to mention, Peggy, that Nancy commented that the week has been rough and anxiety provoking, not only because of the problems in the world, but concern about sons and students' perception of what the world is like. I use mindfulness and yoga in my work and at home, which has not been as effective lately.
Thank you, Nancy, for sharing that. And I think it is even our practices that we're really connected to. I have a meditation practice I do every morning, and I have found that sometimes it's harder for me to connect to it. I think one of the other things I like about that chart is it helps us realize that we don't always spend all our time in the left-hand side. So I know I have a friend who has really struggled with severe depression, and one of the ways that she's been working with her care team is to help her find moments when she is on the right side of the grid, because then you realize there are breaks from the left. That's somebody who's in an extreme situation, but she's found it to be really helpful. This is just another worksheet that we'll have available for you, so you can identify those situations that cause stress. You can or share it with your students and what your solutions are, and if you might have some other solutions for them. So this is just a reminder that there are some strategies for building and sustaining resilience. And one is prep. So you can use the HearthMath tool to set your tone for the day. So you're going to start your day with an awareness that you're going to drop and check in with your breath, connect with a regenerative emotion, and shift your physiology. I find this works really well if I am grumpy or stressed. It's good. It's great on days when I'm great, but it also helps when it's a tough morning. And again, you can do it while you're driving. You can do it while you're washing your hands. Shift and reset to a more coherent state as soon as possible after stress reaction. So again, after you've had something happen, you want to try to use one of the tools if you can. I was joking with Montserrat that this was how I felt uh, the hair standing on end after I don't know if any of you received it, where I got the notice that it was mandatory evacuation 2 weekends ago. And since that most of us have been affected by those evacuations in the last few years in some way or another, I needed I needed to reset. Sustain just means make this a regular practice. If you do it every day, you are starting to shift the baseline of how you respond to outside events. I can't even begin to tell you what a difference it's made for me in my life. And I start meetings at Kaiser with high-level executives that are really having a rough time right now, just because they're trying to manage a large healthcare system through a pandemic. And they really appreciate doing the HearthMath, starting our meetings with HearthMath. We are short on time, so I am going to move through that. And if you want to stay, I'll walk you through another quick coherence technique. I just want to let you know that these are the biofeedback tools. HearthMath is offering them for 50% off if you email me, and we'll have our contact information available.
And SCO is interested in supporting folks that are, would like to purchase devices. And so if you go to the Google form that they have provided for this session, you can fill that out and inquire more about that. And if you don't mind, Peggy, really quickly, just kind of going back to that slide with the device on it. We did use this with our high school students, and they did it on a little mini iPad, and the little clip that you see in there goes on your ear. And the kids were freaking out because they're like, wait a minute, what's this monitoring? What's happening to me right now? And if you look at the colors on the screen, it was kind of giving them a picture of where their emotions were. And Peggy said, okay, now think about something that maybe stressed you. And they would see in real time how those colors would shift. And they would look at each other and they're like, wait a minute, what does yours look like? So really thinking about bringing that awareness, especially for our youth, it was a really powerful exercise. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it was. What was the funnest, the most enjoyable part for me was that the students didn't want to leave and they wanted to do another quick coherence. Usually with teenagers, you think they're going to just run out the door. So that was delightful.
We had juniors and seniors, for those of you who are wondering, because I always wonder where the cutoff age is, where the interest is just less, but they were all incredibly engaged and had a really good experience. So we are at time, and we want to be mindful that some of you need to pop off. But again, as Peggy said, if you are willing to stay just a few more minutes and we can walk you through another quick coherence, we're happy to do so. There is also a Google folder that will have these resources there for you, along with our contact information. So we thank you again for making this your last session of today. And for those of you who need to go, thank you again for being here and sharing in this journey with us today.
So do you want me to go ahead and do this, or? Yeah, okay. All right, so let's just go ahead and get comfortable. And let's focus our attention on the area around our heart. Eyes open or soft focus, closed, whatever feels most comfortable to you. While you have your attention on the area around your heart, imagine that your breath is flowing in and out of that heart area. You want it to be a little deeper and a little slower than usual. You keep your attention on that area around your heart with a slow, deeper breath. Let's recall a positive feeling. Might be joy. It might be appreciation. Might be a feeling of connection, gratitude, whatever it is that you can really make an effort to feel that and breathe that emotion slowly in and out of that area through your heart and around your heart. Okay. And when you do that, you can do it for whatever period of time feels comfortable for you. The longer you do it, if you want to do it like at night, it just helps with building your resilience, recharging your battery. And want to echo and say thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Montserrat. I always love getting to spend some time with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
And thank you, Tara, for helping us.
Thank you, Tara.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.